think they would have. I mean,
$6 for the entire day. But we did see several
Yeah, not hardcore boots though. They were the kind of.
just confirming that I know you can get a boot off the
Yeah, we are live, so Big Brother is listening.
My father went bankrupt, and the sheriff came along all of the boats. My father's down there staring at him.
That's exactly.
And the guy, he said, yeah, but what are we going to do? He said, well, I'm coming back down on Saturday morning with bolt cutters. If you're here, I'll cut your bolt too.
so the marina went bankrupt, and then they tried to seize the boat.
The sheriff came, and he had orders to seize all the marina property, so he chained every boat
That
to
were
a slip.
rented from the.
Correct, they didn't. I was like, well, what could you do? I said, well, you can go to bank. Take too long. Bolt cutters. They all showed up Saturday morning. They didn't own bolt cutters. 10 boats. And they
I'm sure the statute of limitations is passed.
Oh, yeah. I think
And actually, it's government illegally seizing property as opposed to anything else. So.
and I was in.
It's a little clock there says we have 4 minutes. That clock says we have 2 or 1 minute. 2. All right. So we'll go with the wall clock then.
We can wait though. Yeah, I think we're trying to come up with coffee and breakfast. What's a minute or two here or there?
nice ring up for that. Yeah. All right, I could go ahead and start and let people start to continue to filter in as they get through their morning coffee. Over the past 10 years or so, law school classrooms have been faced with the influx of people being addicted to their mobile devices. The first was your laptops, and now we're down to smartphones and tablets. And instructors have responded to this challenge of fighting for their students' attentions in various ways. Some have tried to hold the line by outright banning these devices in their classrooms. Others have taken a more laissez-faire approach and said they're grown adults. If they want to take notes or if they just want to play flying hamsters, it's fine. It'll all come out in the exams at the end. We've decided to try and take a third approach, which is how we learn to stop worrying about class laptops and embrace the flipped classroom to use the students' love of technology in our favor. Speakers and sections, today you're going to hear from 4 of us. We're going to talk for about 10 to 12 minutes each, hopefully leaving 15 minutes at the end for questions. And we'd really love to hear from you, especially if you've had experiences putting together your own flipped classroom. First speaker is me, Charlie Perkins. I'm the Access Service Librarian at Elon. I'm going to give an overview of the presentation and talk a little bit about educational theory. Jeff Chilcott is our instructional technologist and AV coordinator. He's going to talk about the different systems we use both to put together the program and to host it online. Lisa Watson is our cataloging librarian. She's going to talk about the classroom experience both over the past couple years, both putting together the program as an instructor and what we do in the classroom. And then our dean, Kate McLeod, Associate Dean for Library and Information Services, is going to talk about the different assessments we've done and what our plans are for the future of the program. So I would be remiss if I didn't take this opportunity to introduce you to Elon. We're located in Greensboro, North Carolina. We're a relatively young school. We're celebrating our 10-year anniversary this year. We're composed completely of full-time students. Their median age is 24 years old, and they're seeking to get their degree in an accelerated 2.5-year course of study. Our first class on that program started this past fall. The school and the law school and the university as a whole is committed to an experiential education. And just a little bit of trivia, Elon is the Hebrew word for oak. Apparently crossword puzzles love that. So if three down is your next clue, now you know. So what do we teach? Our flipped classroom is for a 1L legal research class. It's a 1-credit introduction to legal research. For first-year law students, it's taught by the law librarians. Topics include secondary sources, case law, statutes, and of course regulations. We teach both in print and online formats, and when I say online, that's primarily Westlaw, Lexis, Bloomberg, and Fastcase. They get Fastcase because they're members of the North Carolina Bar as student members. Why we still teach in print? New associates report they research about 14.5 hours per week. And while vast majority is doing online, free or paid, they're still spending about 15% of their time using printed materials. Also, we don't know where our students are going to end up, and a lot of them will end up in areas where they will have a couple print sources that they will need to rely on heavily. We want them to be able to be successful wherever they go. Additional reasons, most online services are still organized at some level using legacy systems from the print world. And so if they can see that in the print, it helps them contextualize these services, something as simple as citations. And finally, it gives them the ability to physically, tangibly touch resources and think about them in different ways, as opposed to just an undifferentiated mass of information available on Westlaw. What do we mean by flipped classes? This group probably is very well familiar with the concept of flipped classrooms. Actually, yesterday, Eliza Fink and Anna Walsh-Long and their micro-learning legal research did a survey, and about half of the people in that room were already implementing at least some form of a flipped classroom. But just so we have our terms together, students are responsible for watching a video lecture prior to coming to class. So you move the lecture portion out of your in-class time so that you're free during your class time for your students to work in groups, apply the information they were supposed to absorb through the videos, in your classroom, and the instructor can then work with them in order to make sure they're getting their concepts. Why did we move to a flipped classroom? Again, there's been a push throughout legal academia for more experiential learning and more simulation courses. You see this in the ABA standards 303 and 304. Also 306 deals with distance education, but that's more of the requirements you need to be successful. Also, technical barriers are coming down. It's a lot easier to screen capture. It's a lot easier to make audio recordings, and a lot easier to host materials now than it would have been even 10 years ago. And resources are increasingly available. One of the resources we used was from the Working Group for Distance Learning in Legal Education. This is the 2012 edition. Information is constantly being updated. I think I counted 6 events here that dealt with it. And 2015, the Working Group put out an updated one. So there's plenty of material out there to help you along, and you're not really blazing a trail all by yourself. When we start to design a video, things that we want to think about is that lecture materials can be delivered in a wide array of formats. We're going to tell you how we did it, but look at what tools and skills you have available and what works best for your students. A flipped classroom can be as simple as an audio file with a downloadable copy of a PowerPoint presentation. Some people actually prefer this. They feel it gives the students more options. They can put it on their phone and listen to it while they're driving or walking their dog. Video PowerPoint, what we do is the video of a PowerPoint screen capture with the instructor voiceover integrated into one file. But you can do also videos of the instructor lecturing, and that can be as simple as the instructor talking into the built-in webcam on their laptop, or as extensive as a fully produced TED Talk, depending on the resources and the time you want to invest in this. So don't let those kind of barriers get in the way of trying this. You've got a wide range. And again, Jane Banton, Adventures with Articulate Storyline here at Cali, talked about how they did it. And again, Advanced Legal Research Instruction and micro-learning were all presentations here that talked about different ways people did it. So find something that works well for you, and you can move forward with that. When you're putting together your videos, please remember to consider accessibility issues, primarily closed captioning. Either have it embedded in your closed captioning as part of your video, or provide transcripts so everyone can take advantage of the information. And finally, videos should be kept short and simple. Distractions make it harder for students to pay attention, and while students' attention spans were originally thought to be about 20 minutes long, that's come down to 10, and now some experts are recommending you don't even go longer than 7 minutes in your videos. Kate and Lisa will both talk about the feedback we've gotten from our students about our videos on that point. A quick note about attendance when you're putting together your videos. Due to the fact that videos are replacing the traditional lecture, you need to know if your students are accessing that information before they come to class and you're expecting them to apply it. There are different ways to do this. The most simple way is to use a quiz, just like you would do to assess that they were doing their out-of-class reading. Many of the software programs have tracking systems that allow you to know which students watched the video, how much of the video they watched, if they watched it multiple times. And the other thing you can do is you can actually embed quizzes in the videos. And both Kate and Lisa will talk later on about how we have done various parts of these different assessments over the years and going forward. I did promise a little bit about learning theories, but I don't want to oversell that. I mean, realizing that there are, this one survey in 2004 found over 70 different kinds of learning theories. There are people who get PhDs on this. We just want to concentrate on 3 concepts. First is the constructivism, as opposed to behavioralism, which is only interested in people kind of giving a conditioned response to stimuli, or cognitivism, where people are expected to memorize lots of information. Constructivism is we want students to be active learners and create their learning from their experiences and reflection. We're going to talk a little bit about the acronym VARC, which is how you can give information to students, and cognitive load, which is important for what we're going to tell our students, and more importantly, what we're going to leave out of our presentations. Constructivism, as I mentioned before, it's reflected on the experiences. We want students to do something that students are supposed to be actively involved, and then reflect on what they have just done in order to build models that they can apply to the system. The teacher's role in this is not to sit here and give you a large data dump and impart knowledge, but rather to guide the students through a learning and reflection process. Again, this is where you get the idea of moving from the sage on the stage to the guide by the side, which is, at this point, almost cliche, but still useful to remember. The next concept we want to talk about briefly is VARC. VARC is an acronym that stands for visual. This doesn't just mean watching a video. This means representing information in a graphical format. And Rachel Evans' infographics on the brain gave a good presentation on one way of doing this. But these are charts, these are hierarchical organization lines, maps, anything along those lines that helps represent data in a visual context. Oral, this is the conversation. To mix my Greek philosophers, the Socratic method is kind of the Platonic ideal of an oral learner's environment, where you speak and then you get an answer back. Reading and writing is what we're most used to. This is the text, and then writing out your exam. It's also these bullet points right here on the screen. So when you're putting together your PowerPoint slides, think about ways they're getting to listen to you as you speak. They're getting to see the different charts and visual representation of information that you've put on the screen, as well as the bullet points. So it gives you multiple points of access. And finally is kinesthetic. This doesn't just mean getting up and moving around or physically interacting with an object. It also means applying a concept to something that you feel is real. So those in-class exercises give us an opportunity for the students to contextualize what they're learning in a real-world environment. And also, if you do them in small groups, it gives them the opportunity to have multiple conversations, which helps oral listeners as opposed to just the one that the instructor is giving. So don't think about these in conflict with each other, but as multiple ways, multiple access points to your students. Finally is the idea of cognitive load theory. This basically says that we have senses, a working memory, and we take our information from the senses into the working memory. Information that doesn't get accepted by the working memory is dropped. And the working memory then has to grab something from the long-term memory, a schema where it can attach this new idea so that it can be put back and filed away back in the long-term memory. The shorter the distance between something we already know and the new information makes it easier for the working memory to find that schema and quickly put it back in the long-term memory. Also, throwing lots of stimuli at the working memory causes it to drop tasks. And then that happens, information is lost, now transferred to long-term memory, which is why we recommend having the short videos. And while hyperlinks and other things like that are great, push them to the back of your presentation, because a hyperlink in the middle of the presentation is an invitation for the student to wander out in the internet with no clear path back home. So what are the benefits of using these videos? Students may watch them when they want. They can repeat without feeling like they're holding up the class or wasting the professor's time. And they can also be used as point of need. Maybe a student wasn't particularly interested in how to put together a legislative history their 1 year, but then they get a job working in a state senator's office. Suddenly they can go back, watch those videos, and get back up to speed quickly. The other advantage is they create the space to allow in-class practice. In class, you don't want to just rebroadcast, as was mentioned in the keynote speech yesterday. This is a time to interact with your students, have them doing real-world things. Having them work in groups is especially helpful. Again, professors are acting as facilitators, and they learn by building on their existing knowledge base. Remember, videos may get all the glory in this, but it's really the active learning and the interaction the professor has in facilitating that active learning where we make that value differential better than just reading a book or watching a video randomly off of YouTube. So with that, Jeff is going to talk to us about content creation and media delivery.
All right, so for the next 10 minutes or so, I'd like to speak about 2 products that we used that were essential in flipping our 1L legal research class, and then I'd like to make mention of a product that's new to us but will be essential as we move forward. So these three products are Camtasia, MediaCore, and Kaltura. And I don't know how many of you folks are probably familiar with at least Camtasia. So we use that to create the media content for the course. Then we uploaded to MediaCore, which is the platform that we use to deliver that media content to the students. Moving forward, we have just contracted with Kaltura, and that's more of a comprehensive media creation plus delivery platform. And that migration is occurring for us this summer. My background is in film, so when I was asked to assist with this project, my thought was to break it down in kind of a film production process where there's three phases of pre-production, production, and then post-production. Camtasia Studio is a huge part of that process, production and post-production process. So speaking about the pre-production phase, we had to decide on how we wanted to flip, because there's plenty of ways to flip a classroom. But for us, that was including having the students watch content-heavy instructional videos in preparation for class using that guide-by-the-side approach that Charlie mentioned. Using Camtasia, the visuals produced would be screen capture only. We wouldn't do any of the webcam or floating or talking head sort of videos. Some of the PowerPoints would be PowerPoint slide heavy, while others would be the instructional demos using the legal research websites. Luckily for us, our department had already purchased desktop microphones as well as multiple licenses of Camtasia, so everybody had all the equipment necessary to begin the project. The other process included in the pre-production phase was that we wanted to ensure that everybody had a working understanding of how to use Camtasia effectively. So we set aside time to get together and do a short training session. I shared some tips about nonlinear editing that I had learned in film school, and then we were able to go over some tricks that you can use in Camtasia, and we were able to make decisions based on various recording options within the program to make sure that everybody's product at the end had a uniform look to it. So then after that, moving on to the production phase, all we needed to decide was the content experts were able to divvy up the content, decide on a slide format, and just move forward that way. I don't want to get too much into too much detail about Camtasia specifically because there's a lot to it. I just wanted to make note of two things about how Camtasia is compatible with PowerPoint and how that made the process a little bit easier for everybody. Camtasia allows for an add-in which installs directly into your PowerPoint ribbon, and it also provides a way for you to import the notes that you have cut and pasted into those PowerPoint slides. It allows you to import those as closed captioning for your completed recording. So this is just a screenshot of what it looks like. The add-in just sits in the ribbon here, and then you've got a few recording options over here. For the closed captioning, you simply cut and paste whatever your script is in here, and once the recording's done, it asks if you want to import those in as closed captions. So that brings me to the post-production phase, which Camtasia Studio, as I mentioned before, is a non-linear editing suite. This is what it looks like if you're unfamiliar. It can get pretty intense. There's lots of bells and whistles, but I don't want to get into any of that. I'm sure that these folks could answer some questions if you have any about which tools they use, which they didn't. But if you're not familiar with this sort of program, there is a learning curve. But they all took that on, and I think they can all attest that the more that they used it, the easier it became. So I think the important takeaway here is that we wanted, once we were in this, to render those videos. They all had to be of the same quality, and that was the most important part. Once they were in that MP4 format, we could then upload and deliver that content, which is where MediaCore comes in. So again, luckily for us, we were in the first year of our contract with this educational video platform, which basically means we had unlimited space to securely upload and share media content across the entire university. So here's a screenshot of what our media library looks like, and it's branded with Elon's brand. And it was being used across the university, like I said, for events, lecture capture, studio projects, but specifically in the law school, we were using it to capture and share moot court competitions, oral arguments, bar prep lectures, and communications assessments. Within no time, the law school became one of the heaviest users. You'll see right here, this is the number of videos, 541, versus the rest of the undergrad campus, which was producing about 1,000 videos. I think what's different about the 1L legal research course is that this was the first time a course at the law school had decided to create all the content in-house for the flipped course format. So my hat's off to them for trying that approach. Here's a shot of what the legal research collection looks like with the various sub-collections. And then another shot of just what the actual video portal looks like. Two things that we needed out of MediaCore, which they provided, was a secure way to share those videos collections with specific groups and specific users. And then it also provided us with student tracking. So we were not only able to see a timestamp of when the students watched, but we got to see which user and the percentage watched. It was a little bit buggy, and I'm sure that Lisa can tell you a little bit more about that. But unfortunately, as we kind of figured out what the workflow was, MediaCore got bought out by another company, Workday, and so MediaCore is no more. We had to go on a research and discovery for a new platform. After a few months, we decided on a company called Kaltura, which, as I mentioned before, the transition is ongoing. Our first data migration won't happen for another month or so. So I can't get into too much detail about anything past the reasons why we decided Kaltura was right for us. This is a screenshot of their media space, which looks a lot like MediaCore. It's a little bit cleaner, but we like that it's very similar. So here's the reasons that we decided on MediaCore. Kaltura not only allows us to do everything that MediaCore did, but it also had a few additional features. Well, first of all, they told us that they would do the data migration. So everything that's in MediaCore is getting migrated over to Kaltura starting next month. And then all users across the university have access to Capture Space, which is essentially like Camtasia. It's a screen capture application. I'm not sure that it's wholly going to replace Camtasia, especially in the law school, but it's definitely a plus for the rest of the university because now they have access to a program where they can do screen capture and they don't have to purchase any extra software. The really cool thing that I think sold us on Kaltura was, so I showed you a picture of Media Space, but the cool thing about Kaltura is this Kaltura Reach, which is an automated speech recognition application. So any videos that you import in or upload to Kaltura, it's going to automatically work to recognize those spoken words and then transcribe them and put them in as closed captions. So all that work that we were doing before from PowerPoint to Camtasia and then making those adjustments within Camtasia to sync up the closed caption, that's all going to be done in Kaltura. So also they do automatic content and metadata ingestion. So that means any of the slides that you've got that get imported also go into a storage of metadata, searchable metadata. So if a student's looking for a specific word, they can just type that in and search for it. And every instance of that word in the video is going to come up within the program. And the last thing, the data analytics are supposed to be more varied and robust than the ones that we were using before. So I'm hoping that Kaltura is going to spur more professors into attempting the content creation and delivery process, but we'll just have to see how it goes over the next couple of years. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lisa.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about how an individual class session is designed and run. First, I'll talk about what we did before we flipped the class, then I'll talk about how we flipped the class, and then I'll talk about what we did last year. So 2013, that was basically life before MediaCar, which was, as Jeff told you, our video platform. And essentially, it was a typical legal research class. It was generally lecture all the time for about 60 minutes, once a week, for 13 weeks. Typically, it was PowerPoint lectures. However, sometimes we would do in-class live demos as well. And for our students, it was a lot of passive learning or passive listening. We had out-of-class readings, about 10 chapters stretched over those 13 weeks, and it didn't matter what book we assigned, they hated every single one of them. Every year we got complaints about the book. We had no lab, or at least limited lab. It really depended on the professor and basically how much time we had in class, whether we could actually get the students in the books or at least on Westlaw, Lexis, Fastcase, or Bloomberg. I do know that when we were able to get the students in the books, they absolutely loved it. They liked working with the systems, they liked doing hands-on research, and it was the one thing that they really enjoyed about the class. However, it was the one thing we did least in the class too. We had 4 take-home assignments that covered secondary sources, cases, statutes, administrative law, typically the things that you cover in legal research class. Our grades were part of another class, legal writing. So what we would do is we would get the grades and then send them up to that class who would incorporate them into their grading. So that was our class. It was essentially all lecture, all the time. Unfortunately, very little hands-on practice, which is what they wanted. We had out-of-class readings that they hated. We had 4 take-home assignments, and grades were part of legal writing. And generally, our students were not that happy with the class, to be honest. They generally weren't very satisfied with it, especially with the lecture all the time and the readings. So we decided to flip the class, just like that. We knew we had to make a change. We wanted to make sure that our students could have a better class period with what they actually enjoyed, meaning that we wanted more hands-on time for them. So to do that, we had to make some major changes. The number one thing, we had to get rid of the in-class lecture. In order to devote class time to actually using the books or the systems, we had to get rid of the PowerPoints, or at least the in-class lecture at that time. Some of us kept a short demo. Some professors didn't, some did, but the demos really varied depending on how much time we could devote to them. But we usually spent no more than 10 to 15 minutes if we did do a demo, which basically left the rest of the time for a hands-on practice. We had 13 weeks. Now what we did is that we created about 9 mandatory labs and about 5 optional tutorial sessions. In the mandatory labs, some of the professors would do a quick little demo, then they would provide a research assignment for the students to work on. The students would break out into groups, they would work on that research assignment, and then at the very end of class, the professor would go over that assignment with them. For the 5 optional tutorial, they were truly optional. If the students had a question, they could come to that class and the professor would be there to answer it. If the students wanted to work on another research project, they could come to that class and we would give them a research project they could work on during that. So it was honestly optional. They could come, they could not come. It was just if they needed more time, it was there for them. We eliminated out-of-class readings. To be honest, we didn't really believe they were actually reading, and they generally hated the books, so we just took that away. But we still had to make sure they were coming to class prepared. So what we did instead was create videos. And all of them were created by us, the legal research professors. The topics included our main topics: secondary sources, cases, online searching, statutes, and administrative law. And what we did with those topics is we would break them down into subtopics covering all sorts of different things. We created 46 videos. We tried to keep them as under, or at least under 10 minutes if we could. The online demos typically took a little bit longer, but generally they were between 2 to 10 minutes long, depending on what the subject was. Production time, there was a bit of a learning curve using Camtasia. It was my first time using it, and it took about 5 hours per video to actually create these videos. And that includes basically taking pictures of the books or screen capturing whatever we wanted to show them, adding it into PowerPoint, and then adding the notes underneath the slide, then uploading it to Camtasia, and then editing it. Longest time took recording, actually recording our voice on there. And then we would have to add the closed captioning, or it would actually go into it, but we would have to edit it. So in general, it took about 5 hours to create these videos. But we still have the same problem as we did with the reading. How did we know they were actually doing the outside work? So what we did, we added quizzes. This was the first time we've ever done quizzes. And what we did is we had 4 quizzes on our 4 main topics. So secondary sources, cases, statutes, administrative law. Each of the quizzes were created out of a bank of about 60 to 80 questions. And out of that group, the students would have 15 random, either multiple choice or short answer questions. There was no time limit, open book. They could use anything they wanted to answer these quizzes. And it was outside of class, and they could take these quizzes over and over again, which they did. We had some students parked outside our door taking them 30, 40 times to get 1 point. We graded them on a 15-point scale, and if they got a 14, many of them would keep trying until they got a 15. It drove them crazy, and frankly, it drove us crazy too. We had 4 take-home assignments. That didn't change. We kept those exactly the same. Our grades were still part of legal writing. So what did we have in 2014? Basically, we had a brand new format. There's still no in-class lecture, no book. We had videos. Our class time was devoted to hands-on learning instead of passively listening. We had quizzes to test the knowledge, and we had 4 take-home assignments, and grades were part of legal writing. So did we have happier students? I believe so. I believe they liked the class. However, we wanted them to love it, so last year we did make some changes. Now, we didn't add in the lecture. Labs remained the same, but we made every professor actually do a 10-minute demo, because we had heard the students, when they did get a demo, they enjoyed that. We kept the group the same. We would break them out in groups, and then they would get a research assignment that they would work on, and at the end of the class, the professor would go over the assignment with them. Still no out-of-class readings, but for the students that actually did like a book or to have a book, we added a recommended reading citation. No change to our assignments. We kept the same 4 take-home assignments covering our same 4 topics. So what else did we change? The big change occurred with the videos. We added a brand new topic called foundation videos. When we had gone through our videos, we learned that there were things that were missing, things that we felt the students needed, things that we needed to cover. So we added a whole set of videos. And also, students had requested that we have shorter and more videos. So what we did is for our longer videos, we cut them in half. So that way we would have less time for a video, and they enjoyed that a lot more. So basically, we increased our set by 12 videos for a total of 58. We made some cosmetic changes. Instead of the green background, we added a blue background, and next year we're going to this gray background that you see here. We had some difficulties this year. The year before, we were able to easily add closed captioning. However, for some bizarre reason, MediaCore stripped out our closed captioning. So even though we added it through Camtasia, MediaCore took it away. But luckily, we did have transcripts this year for every single video. We had heard the year before that students had requested or they liked transcripts, so at least they had something that they could have and read as they were watching the videos. And it actually worked well with the quizzes because they could then use those transcripts for the quizzes. We were a bit short-handed this year. We went from 4 people working on the videos down to 3. And this time, though, it only took 2 hours to create 1 video. There is a bit of a learning curve with Camtasia, so the more you do it, the faster you get. All in all, we approximately had 6 hours of video that were assigned over 14 weeks. Our class structure, that was another big change. We completely eliminated the optional labs, got rid of them. Essentially, when we gave the students a choice between either coming to class or not coming to class, they chose not to come to class each and every time. But then they would complain about not having enough hands-on work. So we decided to eliminate the option, and we completely took out the optional class, and so every class was mandatory at that point. We also ended up for adding an extra 10 minutes to our class and an extra week. So all in all, they got more hands-on practice for 2015. We had to do something about the quizzes too. There was a lot of stress the year before with them constantly taking that quiz over and over again. So instead of having out-of-class quizzes, we added them to our class. So we still kept four quizzes, basically covering our main topics, but they were in class. And we had 15 pre-decided multiple choice and a few short answers, so they weren't random at this time. They had a 15-minute time limit. It was still open book. They used those transcripts that we added, and they enjoyed that. And we kept it one time. It was far less stressful for our students. Our class was also no longer part of legal writing, so for the first time, we were actually on our own. So in the end, 2015, what did we have? We had more videos, 14 classes, so we got that extra week. It was stretched over 2 terms with a long break in the middle. We had much more time with the books and with the online system, less stressful quiz format, and for the first time we were separated for legal writing. So did we have happier students in 2016? And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Kate, who's going to talk about assessments.
And I know you've had a lot of people talking about assessment, and this is more of our internal assessment on how well we're doing rather than something to comply with the ABA rules. So let's get that out right away. We actually looked at 4 things when we wanted to talk about assessment. And the first thing we looked at was the class evaluations. I know that they're gross, they don't answer all of the questions. However, they are what our senior administrators look at. They are what the people on main campus look at when they're making the evaluations. So to get more detailed information, we did individual focus groups with the students to find out how they felt about the videos in the program. We also used a university program where they came in and evaluated the production value and content of all of our educational videos. And then we did, Then we did our own self-assessment based on what we felt we had done wrong, how should we improve it. That's how we ended up with more videos in year 2 than year 1. So when I looked at the class evaluations, and I've been at Elon for 8 years, and I can tell you that like many places, student satisfaction is inverse to the size of your class. So here's the last 2 years prior to flipping. 2013, we had 12 people in our classes. In 2013, we had 18. 2012, we had 12. So student satisfaction, you notice there's a marked dip there. When we look at the student satisfaction, when we're looking at after the flipped classroom, so for 2013 and 14, which we're going to look at more specific evaluations on future slides, that's important because those 2 years, the year before the flip and the first year of the flip, we had exactly the same class size of 18 students, and we had the same instructors. 2015, our class size went up to 23 from 18, and we have 2 of the same instructors and 1 different instructor from the previous year. So here we looked at overall class satisfaction. Also, Elon is known for engaged learning. So on main campus, there are a couple of things that are extremely important to them, and one is the student feeling that they are actively participating in the class. This is the student satisfaction, or the ranking of our active participation in class. And you notice that especially when we look at the 2 years where we have the same class size and we have the same instructors, that we were looking at an increased evaluation on our 4s and 5s, and 5 is the top of the scale, 1 being the bottom of the scale. We had significant decrease in the students giving 1s and 2s, and a significant increase in the students giving 4s and 5s. So that's really important when we start to think about this. Again, when we look at, did we mix theory and application? Are we giving them hands-on experience? You see what you expect, class size increases, 12, 13, marked drop. On the other hand, when class size increased between the flipped classrooms in 14 and 15, our evaluations actually went up. for those. Again, if we look at the same apples to apples, same instructors between those 2 years, we again have a drop here and a significant increase here. So what this tells us is that overall, the flipped classroom is really appreciated and liked by the students. We also wanted to get student input that is not, that we can't get out of the evaluations that are, say, 1 through 5, and whatever you want to write down at the end. So what we did is we did a couple of things. We invited every student in the program, and we ran an internal evaluation. We came in, we asked all of the students, they were invited to sections, we fed them. You don't have to feed law students a lot. Coffee and donuts in the morning, milk and Oreos in the afternoon seem to work very well. And then we asked exactly the same question in each focus group for the both years, so that we're trying to get equivalent data. And these are some of the things that we had as takeaways. First is we noted a drastic drop in attendance. 40% of the students attended in 2014 to the focus groups. We only had about 10% come this year. And personally, I think it's because they were not as unhappy about some things as they were in 2014. The viewing tracking from MediaCore, we said to them, what do you think about MediaCore? And then 15 minutes later, we could get something else said during that focus group. So we had a lot of unhappiness on MediaCore in 2014. Still some, but not near as unhappy. The quizzes got a lot of feedback in 2014, almost no feedback in 2015. Consistent feedback that they'd rather have more videos that are shorter than longer videos and few of them. They wanted additional hands-on, which we did change to create. We still got the same feedback. They want even more. We gave them the mandatory material that they asked for, which was the in-class demos. We were told they wanted more in-class demos. What I want you to say is no matter what you do, you are never going to make them all happy. There is a small, consistent group who says, we want in-class lectures. We don't want to have to watch the videos. So that's my takeaway, is you're never going to make them all happy. So what did we do off the feedback from 2014? We attached transcripts to every single video that we created. We did shorter videos. We did in-class demos for everyone as mandatory. We increased the mandatory class time so that they'd have more practice time in the materials. We increased feedback. We had mandatory individual meetings with your instructor to go over the take-home assignments. And let me tell you, that's a significant time input. I had 67 students this year, and each individual meeting averaged about 30 minutes. And then we changed the quizzes. 2015 takeaways, they still want shorter videos. They want more class time. They want us to change the quizzes, and they want increased and timely feedback. So based on this, we'll talk a little bit about what we're going to change for next year. But we needed a way to evaluate our instructional materials. So we did two things. Teaching and Learning Technologies is a part of the IT department on main campus, and they have a program for all faculty where you can turn in your instructional materials, and they have undergraduate students who will review the materials, the production values, and provide you with feedback on all of those issues. So they tell us if there's a glitch, if they find something out of sync. They comment on whether or not they understood what we were talking about, if it was clear, and then they provide us with written comment. Each video was reviewed by 4 students to get the student feedback. In addition, we as groups, at the end of teaching, went through everybody's video. We critique them, and let me tell you, this is a skill that takes a while to learn because you need to figure out how to assess production values, and that's not something that we were trained for. You have to also learn how to give and take constructive criticism. I feel that this is a learning experience that's going to help the library staff as they continue on in their careers. And then you get to be extremely critical of your learning materials, your instructional materials, for yourself and for others, so that you can figure out what you're going to do. That's how we assessed our that. We didn't do that until after the first year. And somebody can say, well, why didn't you do all of this? This is great. You should have done it before you put out any videos. We'd still be doing this. There's a point when you have to just say, as my father who worked in industry used to say, it's good enough for government work. Get it out there. Don't try to be perfect the first time. So what are we doing for next year? So first we are moving to group work. Leadership is one of the cornerstones of the Elon Law School experience, and training students to work in groups. They are assessed in a number of courses on their ability to do so. This is a way for us to be reinforcing that. So they're going to be group work and group grading for most of the course grades. That will allow us to do increased and more timely feedback. If I only have to correct 20 take-home assignments rather than 67, I only have to meet with 20 groups rather than 67 individuals. It's going to allow that to be a much speedier process. So that's going to meet one of their requests, which is more and more timely feedback on their work. We're again going to create more videos. We just finished scheduling and we are now at 80 videos that will be produced for this coming year. We are moving away from the quizzes, even in class, and we are embedding quizzes into the videos themselves, where they will need to answer a question before they proceed on with the rest of the video. Because of that, we are going to take that out of individual percentage of the grade, and we're going to move it into our class participation points, so that we still give some credit for doing it, but we're not going to give as much credit. And we are going to have fewer and longer classes. We have now been moved into one trimester rather than spread over 2 trimesters. So we are going to 11 weeks. However, we are moving from a 60-minute class to a 90-minute class. So we actually get additional minutes of instruction with the students. And that's where we pretty much are at this point. Do you have any questions for us? Yes?
I do. You said that some students still wanted in-class lectures, but a small number, right? But you also said that when you went to the, what do you call it, the one-on-one with the students, that you kind of overwhelmed. Have you ever thought about offering the in-class as an option so that some people might, be able to take advantage of that?
Okay. For me, it's a logistical problem. I have, counting myself, 4 dual degree librarians who can teach 6 sections. If we're doing one section, and each one now is going to be an hour and a half a week, running from September through December. If I'm losing people for an hour and a half at a time, 6 days, 6 times a week, how do I cover the reference desk? I can't have additional time, and there's all that upfront time that the staff is devoting to creating the videos. And the other thing is, since we flipped, I have not gotten any comments on the back, the fill-in. Why is this course being taught? This is a waste of my time, which I used to get 3 or 4 in the program because I read everybody's evaluations. We'd get 3 or 4 every year saying this was a waste of our time, we shouldn't be taking this class, we can just read a book. Or I always loved the thing, the paralegal will do it anyways. But part of it is just logistics and size of our library. that we just don't have the staff to say, if you don't want to do this, and then when do we do it? Do we do it at 6 o'clock at night? Because they're all in class every other time.
But I just thought when you said that you spent like 30 minutes per student or something when you were doing the one.
Well, that was the individual, after they do
Okay.
their assignment, we go over their assignments with them individually.
Okay, so you still gotta do that anyway, even if you did the in-class lecture.
Don't they come to the reference desk and ask questions when you're out there?
Yes.
So you have more time with them then too?
And we have a totally open door policy. I will have them lined out outside my door. They're in the chairs outside Lisa's door, because she's got the nice big soft chairs. But they're just waiting when the assignments are coming around. And I've had them in there at 7 o'clock at night. I've had them in there when I'm trying to do something on Sunday afternoon. So it's not that they don't have contact with us.
A little lonely after they're done with all their assignments.
On the other hand, the candy bowl stays much more filled.
When you, how large group are we talking?
Wow.
Oh, we're looking to go to, groups of 4. That's what we did in the in-class exercises. The question was,
How big a group?
how big of groups are we going to be doing? They asked us to repeat those for the mics. We do groups of 4 in class, and so we're going to have them decide, they're going to pair off on their own groups of 4 in the first 2 weeks, and they'll practice through those. That's a large enough group that there's reinforcement without being so large that somebody can really skate by without doing any of the work.
And another grading point is that they are to evaluate each other's contribution to the group work each assignment. So they will evaluate each other on whether or not they contributed to group work. And that, again, is part of our leadership and teaching students to work as groups, which they're going to have to do when they go out to practice.
In-class assignments, is there like a product that they're producing, or what's sort of the endpoint that you use to discuss it?
What I can tell you, what I generally do is I give each group a scenario. And this is my fact pattern. And then we walk through in secondary sources, using the secondary sources to answer the issue that we've raised here. Then we'll be going on, when we move on to cases, we'll have them working on finding information on the cases. We haven't asked them to hand in work product before, and part of it is just, we're going over it in class, and again, it's how much can we correct, how much can we do?
What I do, yes.
Yeah, you get into the how much overlap you want to be with legal writing. So having them write a memo each time.
Questions for Lisa, for Jeff?
We did have one more for Jeff, I think. With the Camtasia, what's the one they're using, Kaltura? Is that a university-wide software system, or is it just for the College of Law?
Right, so
Summarize. Yeah.
the question was, is Kaltura university-wide? And yeah, it is.
So did you have any involvement in selecting it?
Kaltura, yeah, so as part of the research and discovery, and we took a look at Panopto and a few other products, but we decided on Kaltura.
Are you guys using that for any distance learning, or do you do any distance learning?
That's something we're looking into doing, but yeah, we don't have a course yet that's specific
Sounds
distance
perfect.
learning, yeah.
In the fall, all of our second-year students are required to go out for a full trimester of residency. So they will be out of the school for an entire trimester each year of their second year. They have tutorials that they are, we call them accompanying courses. But that is, many of those are, some of them are in DC, some of the students have their residency set up in Virginia, we're in North Carolina, some of them are in Raleigh, some of them in Charlotte. They don't have to come back to Greensboro for that. So that will be our first foray into distance type education.
Well, right, and so we did a seminar course this summer with those folks. It was kind of a pilot course, and we were using WebEx for that.
Okay.
And like I said, we'll get into more of that asynchronous stuff. But yeah, using WebEx synchronously in a seminar platform, we piloted that this summer, so we've got a little bit of experience, but not a whole lot.
We'll have a whole lot more by the end of next year. Has anybody else turned into doing videos or?
Videos, but not yet the PowerPoint lecture. We have 2 semesters. Our videos are all
A demo, in-house demo for each one of those for the ANFAST case as part of those 80 videos we talked about for each of the 4 topics. So using a secondary source, using cases. So we do all of that for all 4. We also assign vendor videos. So I'm sorry, I'm not going to spend the time doing one on how to shepherdize or how to keysight. They do perfectly good 20-minute videos that they spend a whole lot more money on than we can. So it's not that I thought some of you would say, why aren't you using the vendor videos exclusively? Because I heard that in the advanced legal research. And that's a reason for me is I want our voice. I want them associating expertise with the library staff. I don't want them thinking you need to go out to somebody else to get the answer and how to do something. So a lot of that is just public relations for us and for getting them to think about these are the experts, this is who you come to, this is who you ask a question to. Any other questions, comments, shared experience? I know it's early, it's Saturday morning.
We thank you for coming out.
And we will be posting the PowerPoints and the bibliography for materials, but again, I think we finished changing the PowerPoints. We're librarians, we finished changing them yesterday. So we will post them probably when we get home on Monday.
6 slides of those.
And if anyone would like, Jeff, how do we? We actually brought this up, and you can turn off the tape now, in case you want to see what they actually look like. Elon University. I know that, but it's not starting. School of Law's first year legal research video series. This video focuses on jurisdiction. Our discussion of jurisdiction is limited to its application to legal research. This video is not intended to discuss the topic in depth, as it will be in civil and criminal procedure courses. If at any point this video disagrees with your civil procedure professor, I am wrong and the professor is correct. This video will explore the definition of jurisdiction, why it is important, federal versus state jurisdiction, and which state's jurisdiction, beginning with the basics. In checking Black's Law Dictionary, I found over 100 definitions of jurisdiction, indicating just how complicated an area of law this can be. The most relevant for legal research and today's discussion is a geographic area within which political or judicial authority may be exercised. In the United States, there are over 50 individual jurisdictions, one for each state and territory and federal. Why is it important for a researcher to identify the controlling jurisdiction at the beginning of the research process? Determining whose law applies allows you to focus your research from the very beginning, saving you time and in practice money. Let's examine jurisdiction based on our research memo. Step 1 in the research process is identifying the issue and the area of law. We have identified one of the issues being researched as the chances of grandparents obtaining custody of the children over an absentee parent when the custodial parent dies. Step 2 is identifying the jurisdiction. The area of law is family law, or more specifically, child custody. Is this a state or federal law issue? The answer to this is state. How was this conclusion reached? The limits of federal jurisdiction are established by the 10th Amendment, which states the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively, or
I'd say the nice thing about these platforms is they're very similar to YouTube and in that you can attach things, you can have a discussion, and this is just MediaCore. You can like it, you can share it, and then for us, we have the analytics, and we're able to download anything that we upload.
And the attachments where we put the
All right,
so they had
and then they've got related media.
The transcripts, you just wrote them out, like, listen to the transcribed?
Yeah, we just scripted ahead of time.
Oh, okay.
Did you, or you use,
Camtasia.
okay, and then put it into?
Into MediaCore had no editing software. And editing, I think this is a 4.52 minute video. Probably when I started editing, it was close to 20. Because I misspeak, things don't line up when I talk, and then you just start chopping. That's the nice thing about the editing software, you can go in and chop that out.
The hardest part for me was the recording. Me too, we use Camtasia. Now my colleague says he'll just edit it for me so I can chill out. You know, just read it. I'll edit it.
But it is not that hard to do, and I encourage you to take a chance and try it out.
Okay.
Do you still need to look at this, Jeff?
No, I'm good, thank you.
We're doing a little in this area. On the lines of 10. We have not incorporated.
Like TED Talks?
Yes.
No, we had a TEDx thing, but it was a main campus thing.
Oh.
Yeah, I think we have the ability to do stuff like that, but it's really a lot of pre-planning process, but yeah.
I was going to ask. Do you want your notes, Charlie?
Just a list of other presentations.
Good job, everybody. Don't breathe, no.
You walk in my house with it, you bags that I have to do like that. Although I'm pretty sure my old dog was old.
I am not doing
Yeah.
that.
Caroline said we call it the Sunday.
I'll forward you and then you can answer. No pressure.
No, she said we were staying until the end.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he was in the chair, wasn't he? My God.